Hi, my name's Chris Candy, and this is the Never Not Run podcast. Or no.
Or do the NNR for.
This is the Never Not Run podcast. I'm your host, Chris Candy.
And I'm Mark Nieto.
Hold on. I want to do this properly. Hold on.
Are you looking up the episode number?
Maybe. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Never. NNR pod. NNR pod. Here we go. Oh, dude. Okay, here we go. I got this. Welcome back to episode 25 of the Never Not Run pod. See, I knew it. I remembered it. It had been that long since we did it, but I remembered it was the 25th one. I didn't have to look it up or anything, Mark. There's a lot to talk about.
How long has it been, really? When did the last episode come out? Do we have a date on that? Because I feel like a lot has changed, but one thing is constant. We're still running.
Okay, dude. The last pod was July 19th, 2023, and it was a great pod. It was you and me talking. But you know what? I will say that this pod doesn't own us. We own this pod. You know, we could do whatever we want whenever we want to do it.
Yeah, I like the new. Maybe we should clarify that because, yeah, we're basically trying to just make it fit into our lives. You know, when we feel inspired to do a pod, we'll do one. And I think today is a perfect example because we had two very inspiring people.
Yeah, it was a really cool episode. We talked to Robert Kessel and Gaby Arvizu. And Robert and Gaby work over at Students Run Los Angeles. Students Run Los Angeles, for those of you who do not know, is a nonprofit organization that organizes students in underprivileged neighborhoods, public schools, and basically find a way for them to run the Los Angeles Marathon. And it sounds like there are multiple races that they plan for them along the way. They get them shoes, equipment, gear. And it was an awesome pod. I think that like this podcast embodies everything that I love about running. It is about, community, and it's about determination. It's also about what I've always found the most inspiring about running. And that's, helping someone out, the camaraderie with it, having another person's back. And that was really, what was apparent in this conversation.
Yeah, this is a very wholesome episode, I must say. It's really sweet to hear people that aren't as concerned with some of the other aspects of it that we like to talk about, maybe, which is, we like to nerd out on certain aspects of it. But it's just really nice to hear people that are out in the community doing things. And as I mentioned in the podcast too, if you ever go out and spectate the LA Marathon, it truly is inspiring to see all of the SRLA kids out there. I mean, it is like, if that doesn't make you want to run, then I don't know what will. So, so I'm really, really happy that Robert, who I believe is a board member at SRLA, and then he connected us with Gaby, who is the CEO of SRLA. So it was just really cool to get to pick their brains and hear some stories from their days being a part of the organization.
Now, to be a little wild here, before we get into the episode, I want to hear your brain, Mark.
Yes.
We're skipping a beat here. Everyone wants to know what we're up to, too, all right? Don't you have that ego? I have been running a little bit, but how have you been running?
So I've been getting really back into it, actually. I took basically, it was weird. The exact same thing happened as last year. Just the holidays came and I just couldn't keep up with the program. So anybody that follows me on Strava or anything like that, I was not putting up any miles. Lots of travel and just, I don't know, lots of boring excuses. But yeah, as soon as that ended and things kind of settled down, then I was able to actually start running again. And I don't have any races that I'm signed up for. I really wanted to do the Big Alta, which is a new race that started up here in the Bay Area in Marin. That was last week, and it looked awesome. I was like really thinking about signing up at the last minute, but I just didn't have enough training put together and didn't feel confident. So I don't know. I'm trying to take this year off completely. I have some other important life things happening that are kind of taking
Oh yeah.
taking priority. I'm getting married this summer, so I'm trying to yeah, I don't want anything obviously to get in the way of that. So yeah, so we'll see. I'm just gonna try to keep like a pretty basic level of fitness going so that when I have a free weekend, I can just jump into a race that I feel like. Maybe it'll be the Yosemite half. I don't know.
That'd be really cool if you do that. Actually, if you do that, let me know because I would love to run that. I've been in similar territory, not putting up crazy miles, just running for fun. And I did a Dallas half marathon back over the holidays. That was
What was that like?
It was fun. I didn't train at all for it, and I just kind of went and did it. And it was neat to run in like another city. I do find it funny that the a couple of the half marathons I run, there's always some connection to my father's movies. So be it the Yosemite half marathon and Great Outdoors, and then the Dallas marathon, and we ran right by the book depository
Whoa.
where JFK was assassinated.
Yeah.
So, um, that was a trip, but it was very cool, and I very much enjoyed it. And there's actually, I mean, the highlight of it was just to see all of the amazing people out there in Dallas, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. And kind of to get into our race schedule a little bit, there was some really badass women runners who were running for a ceasefire in Gaza, and that was really cool to see. Just these badass women running out there months ago, and raising awareness for that, and that was really empowering. There's a big Islamic community out there in Dallas, which I was unaware of, so really great to see them running for the cause, which leads us to our race schedule that we have. I don't know if this is coming out before or after that, but we have our Mecca for Peace 10K on 3/9/24, and then we've got on May 20th we got the Matt K 5K, just for a dear friend of mine, Matt Cars, who taught me all I know about running. He passed away earlier last year, excuse me. So we're going to be doing a 5K run for him. And then on 10/31/24, the Halloween half. And then, of course, we'll round out the year with our half by half on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
I think we'll put this out before, and so we'll share some more information. But yeah, we're gonna do a run to raise money for the Middle East Children's Alliance to try to get some help to some people that are desperately in need of help right now.
Yeah. And this episode is all about help. It's all about people who have been offered help through running. And this was a really beautiful episode. And Mark, it just feels so good to be back doing the pod with you, man.
It really does. It's good to see you. This, and especially, I don't know, there's something very comforting. It's like putting on an old pair of shoes that you've worn in, that still have some life left in them.
I gotta say, we figured out a flow, Mark and I, on how to do this pod, and we nailed it. We nailed it.
I think we're just hitting our stride. Yeah, I think we still got. Yeah, we haven't even hit the wall yet. We got a long way ahead of us.
So Never Not Run pod listeners, be excited because we've got some really cool stuff lined up for this year. And we have some fun episodes already on the books, but let's buckle up. Let's put a little LMNT in our water here and listen to episode 25 of the Never Not Run pod. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming back to the podcast. It's been a while, but we're so happy to be back. with the Never Not Run pod. Today's a really exciting one because we're getting into the time of the year here in Los Angeles where we're getting ready for the LA Marathon. Whether you're running it or not, everyone on this call today, this episode of the show, has endured the 26.2 through the magical streets of Los Angeles. And this will be a really fun one because I'm excited to talk about a main theme that you will see at the LA Marathon, and that is the Students Run LA project. We're here with Gaby Arvizu and Robert Kessel, who both have amazing stories with Students Run LA and the LA Marathon. And Gaby, you are one of the head honchos over there now. And so we really would love to welcome you to the Never Not Run pod. And thank you for taking the time for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Very happy to be on with you.
And
yeah,
likewise.
It's really cool, for both Mark and I, is because we both, I think, ran our first marathon at the LA Marathon. That was our first time, and we're such Angelinos, so it was such a treat for us. But I really love getting the show started off by kind of talking about both of yours relationship with running. And it was a formative experience for me, but Gaby and Robert, at your own pace, what was your experience running your very first mile? What was that like for both of you?
I don't know, Gaby, do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Go for it.
I'm way older, so I probably have a much longer story, but I'll keep it really concise, which is to say that the funny thing about running to me is I grew up kind of playing soccer and lacrosse, and running in practice was my least favorite thing to do, and almost everyone's. It was part of just sort of, do laps. And I only turned to running, to be honest, after I had too many concussions in lacrosse after high school and college, and decided I think I'd gotten a little bit out of shape. And literally one summer I was living in New York City, and Central Park is right there, which is a running capital of the world in its own way, across from the reservoir. And I just said, I'm going to do this. And I literally went to that reservoir and promised myself that I wouldn't take a day off. So I love the name of your podcast because it definitely was sort of my mantra. And that summer when I was 19, I'm not going to say what year it was, but we can say it was 1989, I guess. And I literally just did 2 laps every day that summer, and I never stopped running since. And obviously, once you catch the bug and you're in New York, and I went to college back east, I decided I had to run the New York City Marathon, which I did do in 1991, was my first. And run, I'm on this LA will be marathon 44, I think. I'm a big part of my life. But you asked about the first mile. The first mile was freaking hard, right? Like not enjoyable. And I'm sure everyone can relate to that because it takes a while to both get into the mindset and the muscle, the muscle mindset too. But Gaby, what about you?
Yeah, I love that. And I love the question, because it actually, so I grew up going to LAUSD schools. So K through 12. That's how I came up. And in middle school, we had, there was the runs during PE. And so it was incentivized, right? So of course there's the big locker room that everybody was in. And the way that it worked was that if you were one of the first few to run a mile, I forget what it was, 6 times consecutively or something like that. And you were one of the first groups to do that, you would get this private locker. And it was in this private locker room that was smaller, and it had larger lockers and its own bathrooms and all the different stuff. And so that was my incentive. So that to me was a no-brainer. Middle school student, didn't think twice about it. I just went out there, I did the runs, I got my private locker, and that was my first mile. So it was really fun, to be able to go through that experience.
Yeah, I think we tend to get a lot of people on the podcast who end up running as a kind of as a means to an end, right? There's not a lot of, we haven't gotten the track stars on here yet. Maybe the first one was, but yeah, we tend to get a lot of people that find it through different ways. And so I guess, Robert, you mentioned that you would go run around New York City. When you were in LA, where would you go to run?
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles 2010. And it's funny, I moved and we came in January of 2010, and I was like, sort of still, I always, again, kept running and always kind of fashioned being in quote marathon shape, but hadn't really trained. And I saw that the LA Marathon was in March, and I was like, okay, I guess I can do it. And if I want to drop out, because I hadn't really trained, and we were living basically at the 405 and Sunset Boulevard, and I guess I found that path all the way down to the beach and around. And so it was on the west side, basically, that I sort of found my LA happy place. And now living in Venice, I run primarily either down to Manhattan Beach for those 20-mile runs, or up the other way to that bench that's kind of near Temescal. And so west side running. So nice and cool by the beach, beautiful.
I'm there often, and I know that 20-mile Manhattan Beach run, where you kind of are going right around the harbor, and you feel like you're on the set of Arrested Development. Kind of
Exactly.
with well, Mark and I went to college up in that area. We went to Loyola Marymount, so
yeah, of course.
That zone is either we were at a dive bar in college in that zone, or we're running 20 miles.
Right.
Gaby, what about for you? What parts of LA were you running in, and what parts of LA do you enjoy running in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Valley girl. So I grew up in the 818. And, I think one of the things that I've enjoyed, so I started running really during college. So first there, I started seeing, big campus, Stanford campus, started seeing people running. I miss being active. I gave it a shot. So then I started running, and I haven't really looked back since. So when I moved back to Los Angeles, I think I was just trying to find some of those just long runs, and so Balboa Park is a big one, especially during those like marathon training, getting those longer runs in. That was always a great one. And now what I actually enjoy doing, so I have a 9-year-old son, and we spend a whole lot of time at different parks. And so now I get my runs in at parks, which is incredible, to be able to do some of that while he's doing his thing, whether it's baseball or soccer or whatever he might be doing. I can get my runs in at the park, and I'm able to do that with other moms and parent friends, which is super fun. And then the other exciting part is now being able to run in our 5Ks as well. So every now and again, when everything's going well, and some of our runs that we have with Students Run LA, everything's settled, I go and I jump into our 5Ks, which is always so much fun, and then get right back to business. So, yeah.
Yeah, now that you brought up Students Run LA, I mean, I'll say that when I did the LA Marathon for the first time, I was shocked at the amount of students that were running. And when I say students, I mean, these are, kids, like they are half my size. I remember being blown away thinking, at mile 20, I can't believe these kids are out here with me, like charging. And so I guess, can you take us back a little bit and tell us about the history of Students Run LA? Like, where did the concept come from, and how did you all get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually started really with the history of the LA Marathon. So there was a teacher, Harry, in Boyle Heights, who ran, he was teaching at a continuation school. He ran the very first LA Marathon race. And so he comes back, he completes it, he gets his medal, comes back to, class, the next day, shows all his students. They were all amazed. And then they asked him if he was going to run it again. And so he said, all right, well, you run it with me. And so he challenged some of his students. So the following year, he ran the marathon again with his students. And he started to see just that transformational power of like sport and being active and moving. And so they started to perform better, right, in the classroom. So soon thereafter, there were 2 other teachers in the Valley, Eric and Paul, that caught wind and read a story and heard about, the amazing story about Harry and his students running in the LA Marathon. They said, well, we want to do that too. And so they did, and they expanded to their school. So then from that point, at that time, there was LAUSD board member Roberta Weintraub, who was like, we've got to find a way to provide this to all students in LAUSD. And so they had a meeting, and soon thereafter, in 1989, Students Run LA was born. So we're celebrating 35 years this year of an incredible organization. Over 80,000 students have gone through the program, with just some amazing results that continuously happen year after year. I think as we see students that start the marathon, they complete the marathon. And then our marathon, so we have about 99% of the students that start will complete it. And then from the finishers, 99% of those seniors graduate from high school and they go on to college. With many of those, about 75% of them being first generation students. So we were continuing to see from year one all the way till now, we're continuing to see not just students start the marathon, finish the marathon, but then also accomplish bigger, better things in their lives.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll just piggyback on that as someone that was starting running LA in 2010. And like you, Mark, I just saw these kids in their uniforms. And it's so unusual to see young kids run marathons because the New York City Marathon, for example, won't let kids under 18 run. Our program starts even allows some 7th and 8th grade program. I mean, Gabby, you could speak to probably the percentage. Most of them, though, are in high school. But, there are even, to your point, Mark, some graders, we call them the fleas because some of those kids are literally half your size and they're so little and adorable. And then actually it goes up, of course, to seniors where I look at them and some of them look so old to me. They've got almost mustache beards. So it's a real nice range of kids and all body types, all different sizes. And I mean, just kind of amazing. And like you, I saw these kids and I was like, who are they? And for me, after running the LA Marathon year after year and seeing these kids, I realized I've always been a big believer in, equity among kids and giving kids opportunity. And I loved running. And I was like, well, how do I fuse my passion for, hopefully giving back to the community, but also marrying it with something that I really believe in. And to Gabby's point, the power of sport, right? And the power the marathon does to transform all of our lives, which is probably the reason all four of us are even on this podcast, and who's ever listening is probably even listening, is it's really, really powerful. And the minute I was able to join the board back in, I think now 2016, and get to under the hood of the program, it became more and more to me exciting to see both the individual stories, which are unbelievable, but then things that I don't even think people realize about the program, because one of the interesting things, and I'll let Gabby speak more about who are the people that are mentoring these kids, and which are mostly teachers, although I think there's some that aren't. But what was amazing to me is these people are working for free. They're volunteering to train these kids. And I spoke to one of them and they said, no, the program's a gift to me because my classrooms are too big. I don't get the opportunity to mentor individually kids as much as I want in the classroom. And of course, nothing bonds people like running 20 miles, 18 miles, 15 miles, 10 miles, these runs where these teachers have these one-on-one mentorship relationships with these students. And again, I almost got choked up because I was again thinking like these are teachers that are underpaid, overworked, yet on their own time are getting joy and pleasure of mentoring kids outside of the classroom. And I just think that as amazing as it is for the kids, it seems like it gives back to the community and the teachers, and who again are giving their time. But I mean, there's just so many different aspects of the program that are kind of incredible to speak about, that go beyond running. I think that's what's kind of great about it.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, I think for guys like Mark and myself, we're looking at this as a challenge and something to participate in. And we were in our 30s, I think, when we did it. And it seemed like a giant obstacle. And through that, we experienced all of those things that you just mentioned, all the bonding and the achievement, and to that point exactly about what you're capable of. But I always personally say that the marathon is a really great teacher. You kind of don't know what you're going to expect when you go out on it, and it's just long enough to teach you something new each time. And I found that so inspiring, just the fact that you're giving that to a group of people who are young, who haven't even, well, actually, I'm not going to say that, but who maybe wouldn't expect to actively choose that, but to give them that opportunity. And what a gift that is to kind of introduce them to that concept. But the question I was wondering is, I know you mentioned percentages, but how many students are running in this, and where are these students coming from? Is it all LAUSD? And with that, are there any requirements that they need to have, or what's really that information?
Yeah, absolutely. At SRLA, we train over 3,000 middle and high school students. And so many of them actually are from lower income communities, Title I schools, mainly LAUSD, but it's really throughout the LA County area. And so I think it's amazing, to Robert's point, to have just the teachers also running alongside them. I think they play such a critical role in that. So we have over 500 volunteers that coach and mentor their students along this journey. It was interesting because I was talking to one of the leaders the other day, and it's just like, Gabby, like what this really does is, like, students are going through a million different things, but it teaches them that they can go through hard things and get through it and meet their goals and accomplish their goals, and that they are able to see it through. So I think it's just that direct translation with, I think marathon training, and how that translates into life outcomes. Now, second part to your question was with regards to requirements. The biggest one is commitment and dedication. We celebrate, our super fast runners, but we more so also celebrate the ones at the very end. The goal of the program is that they complete the marathon. And if they're out to beat their own records, they're out to beat their own records. But again, these are goals that they're setting for themselves. Our goal is to help them get them to the start line, and then to get them to cross that finish line. So that's the overarching goal, and making sure that they're able to accomplish that.
And then kind of on that note too, I mean, I'm going to ask you to maybe speak on behalf of the students, but do they have a concept of what the training entails? I mean, do you have to convince them? I mean, I'm just curious, like,
Yeah.
Ish, sort of. Yeah, so first and foremost, it starts a lot with our teacher volunteers. I think for some of the points that Robert mentioned earlier, what's really interesting actually is that, having been around now 35 years, is that some of those teachers are actually SRLA alums. They ran with the program when they were students. We're seeing even some of that. But they're kind of the first ones to kind of advocate it. But what's interesting is that, when we go out and talk to some of the students, actually, I was at one of the sites over today, they do what's called Medal Mondays, right? So students run LA, the students run in 6 races before the marathon to train them, right? So they start with 5K, then they build up to 10K, 15K, half marathon, so forth. And what they do is that they wear their medals to school on Monday. And so other students see it, and all of a sudden they start asking questions. It's like, well, I want a medal too. It's like, well, you can get it, you can earn it. And students run LA next year. And many of them do, so I think there's part of it that's just seeing other students. Sometimes they have older siblings. At this point, also, sometimes they have parents that have gone through the program. We have teachers that have gone through the program. And then I think there's something that you were touching on earlier, Chris, which is this notion of friendship. It's also one of those opportunities to be able to run alongside their friends and getting them involved, because I think that's one of the most beautiful things about running, is that there's not that many barriers to participating and doing that. And running's available to you anywhere and everywhere you go. So I think that's the other special part about, being able to participate in the program, doing that with friends, and not really having all this running experience, to kind of get you there.
And we should also say that the kids don't have to pay to be in the program. I don't know, Gabby, if you want to just a little bit on, in terms of requirements, there is none. There is no financial requirement. And we've got sponsors and people that have been really generous in terms of sneakers and bras for the girls. I mean, things that we all take for granted. But I don't know, Gabby, you're better equipped to probably speak about all this stuff.
That's a great point, Robert. Students Run LA is completely free to all the students, to all the leaders, so we're constantly making sure that we continue to do that. So we provide all the entries to all the 6 races that they participate in, the transportation to and from events. That's often a huge barrier. Finisher medals, sports bras, as Robert mentioned, the running shoes, socks. Actually, this past weekend, we did the marathon uniform distribution. and their training shirt. So making sure that they have everything that they need so that they can be set up for success.
What color is it this year? Is it still that yellow, the highlighter yellow, or?
This year we're taking it back. So because in honor of our 35th year, we went with the retro look. So at our anniversary run, our 15K earlier this season, we displayed all of the singlets, or many of them, over the years. And we got all this great feedback about this very specific colorway. And so this year we're going to be wearing and rocking pink. Pink was a color that was used throughout the 90s. And so we're bringing it back, special edition, just for this year for our 35th celebration. So we actually just unveiled that. And so we're really excited, to have our students run and throw it back and take it back a few years.
We
Nice.
were ahead of Barbie. We were ahead of Barbie before. Barbie made pink before, what we're going to say. But we will definitely get you guys some kits to make sure that you can. But it's funny, Chris, that you mentioned that the yellow, and the first couple of years I ran it, they were these black singlets, I think, although it had very bright SRLA yellow. But that's sort of the fun. I mean, I will say to anyone listening to this podcast, I'm not sure when it airs, but the reality is if you go out to the LA Marathon, it is a sea of kids in uniform. And I think that's sort of the beauty. And, as someone that's had the pleasure of running marathons all over the world, I mean, the community and the cheering of the crowds, again, what I think is beautiful about a marathon, and I think Gaby speaks to this again, is it's all different types of kids. But it's also like people that go out and cheer. It just brings cities together. I mean, all the marathons I've run have been in major cities, and I just think it's kind of great when people come out and support the community of runners. And again, you will see a sea or ocean of kids, and this year it will be pink. So.
Well, this episode will absolutely be out before this year's LA Marathon. So for anyone who's listening in the LA area, just step outside of your house or apartment and witness the sea of pink coming down the road. It's so cool. Like, I was thinking too, like, you kind of touch on it a little bit, but like, in training for these events, like, wild stuff kind of pops up, like, it's a crazy physical endurance. And is there anything, like, I remember, for example, for myself, like the first 18-mile run I ever did, like both my arms went numb, and it was because I wasn't moving them around, and no one had told me, like, you need to get the circulation going to your arms. Like, are there any crazy stories? Is there any difference when it's with kids that much younger? Can they handle it in a better way? Do they still experience the same kind of hardships and cramps everyone else does? Like, are there any wild stories that you'd love to share that are fun for maybe the listener to hear about Students Run LA?
Well, Gaby, you know what? I mean, for one moment, for just to kind of be a little wonky, I don't know if you want to talk about the doctor that has been doing. There's been a doctor at UCLA, and Gaby, you can speak to this more, who has been studying these kids, because of course it's there is a controversy around young kids running marathons, which is, or it shouldn't be controversial because obviously science now has shown. But I don't know, Gaby, if you want to talk about what it's.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Dr. Goldman over at UCLA, and in partnership with the Orthopedic Institute of Children. So they've done some research, over the years, just to see, is it safe for younger kids to be able to run the marathon? I think the short answer that they have discovered is yes. Many different reasons. But one of the main ones is that younger students, especially middle school students in particular, they're more inclined to listen to their bodies. Versus, I think as adults are just like, we can run through the pain. We'll be fine. It'll be okay. It's okay. Like if my knee hurts or my ankle hurts, I'm going to keep going. Middle school students are more inclined to kind of just say, I'm in pain, and they stop, and so they really truly listen to their bodies. One thing about students is that they do have to turn 12. We're the only organization or participants in the LA Marathon that can run at the lower age range, but they have to turn 12 by the time they compete and run in the LA Marathon. And one thing that, just to answer your question as well on this one, they do, despite all the training, 26.2 miles is 26.2 miles. It's still going to be tricky. So one of the things that one of the programs that we have as part of SRLA, we engage a lot of volunteers to participate in what we call running them in. And so we engage a number of volunteers to join us at mile 22. And what we do is we start pairing some of the volunteers for running them in to support and run alongside some of those students that are struggling at the very end, and how we help them cross the finish line. So I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things, is to see how the running community comes together to support and uplift one another. And that's, I think, by far one of just the most special, amazing things, and being able to, as a runner, pay it forward as well. And run alongside some of the students that are just trying to accomplish their goal, and something that they've been doing for many months now in trying to, complete the LA Marathon.
Are there any? Oh, sorry, Robert. No, go on.
I was going to say, it's Chris. I was trying to rack my brain thinking, because I've been able to do some of the run them in, and I'm trying to remember some of the trials and tribulations. But to be quite honest, I think it's everything that we've all experienced: blisters, chafing, the usual running, losing some toes here and there. I haven't heard anything more specific than what the four of us have probably experienced, and most of your listeners have. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question is, what kind of things do they say when they're done? I mean, and are there any stories or tales of people, sticking with the marathon and like making lifelong runners out of these students?
The timing of this is absolutely amazing, because I had the pleasure of going up to Zion this weekend and doing a half marathon up there. My first half, never done a half before, only done marathons. Oh, wow. And I went with some friends, and one of them turned out to be an SRLA alum. He's 30 years old. He ran it, 2011 was his first year. He was a senior. And he told me his story, Mark, and he was overweight and bullied. And somehow he got word of the program, and he was just like, I'm going to do this. And he did it. And since then, he ran 7 marathons last year. He's crushing my...
Wow.
And he talked about the experience, and he has become a lifelong runner, and it's built up his own community. He's I won't name him or tell where he works, but he's a successful executive at a film company now. He's making movies on his own. I was so impressed with his story, and honestly, he didn't have any reason to say this other than it was his truth, because we had a long car ride to Zion. Was just, the program was, he said, the most impactful thing in his life. And so it's just funny that you asked that question today, because last week I wouldn't have heard that story and wouldn't have even known. And I think when I've run these kids in, because I've done it many years, every one of them has a different story and a different why. And Chris, you brought that up too. We turned to running, and what do we get out of it? And a lot of them, I do think a lot of them come, from places that they're overweight potentially, or, that they want to build self-esteem, or their siblings have done it. But a lot of times it's amazing, because a lot of these kids will write thank you letters to our donors. And I've seen these letters, and again, every one of them has a different reason, but they're all, completely really emotional in terms of, for me, to read a lot of these kids. But Gaby, I don't know, you're with the kids on a daily basis, so you can probably speak to it better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so much of what you've said, and I think in all aspects of runners, I was talking to one of the students recently, and he's a senior, and, this is his 3rd marathon that he's running. And so he's like, the first 2 years, my goal was just to complete the marathon. That was a goal, just cross the finish line. He said, this year, I know what I'm getting into. So now he has a goal. And he said, I've been training all season long to run it in under 4 hours. And so that's his goal, and I think that's how they all start to create their goals throughout the season. But sometimes we also have some kids that are really, really fast. In fact, one of our SRLA alums was just in the Olympic trials. So it's amazing just to see them kind of continue on. Some of them do start to compete at these higher levels. And, Katya, that's her name, she's running in the Olympic trials this time around. And she was introduced into running through Students Run LA. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I just can't think of a better gift to give a group of kids the opportunity and the infrastructure to do this. Had I known of that, or something I found later, but for someone like your organization to help kind of foster this in a way that's supportive is just so beautiful. And I think that, there are, like I said earlier, there's so many avenues of running, but to really guide a group of young minds through it is just such a cool thing. So, kudos to you too, because it's really, really impressive. And it's one of those things that you don't really know the full story when you're just kind of running by everybody. When you're on the race, you're kind of like Mark said, like, who are these kids? But I will say, for me, like, and I'm sure all of us can relate to it, when you are running and you're in a lot of pain, but then you look over and there's like a 14-year-old, who's doing the exact same thing. You go, I got this. And it also reminds you, which I think a lot of people in the running community need to be reminded of, is we're not doing this to, end world hunger. This is for fun. This is a treat, and this is a really fun thing. And I think that helps give it a really great playfulness to it. So.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And again, I'm always amazed in every marathon you run. You see people pass you, and you're like, "How is that person?" Because they're older, heavier, smaller, whatever it is. You're always just kind of blown away by who's passing who, and there's no real correlation to it at all. I mean, sometimes, obviously, when we see the Kenyans and the Ethiopians and they're spry on their feet, it's not hard to imagine why they're crushing these races. But I totally hear you. Running alongside these kids, sometimes you're like kind of blown away.
I was going to ask if this is caught on in any other places, if you've collaborated with any other organizations or any other cities maybe that have picked this up.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is actually a bit of a sister program. They were hoping to expand our specific SRLA program to Philadelphia. And so we had a good, we still have a very strong relationship with them, I should say. It's Students Run Philly style. And so modeled heavily after Students Run LA, so they're doing great with their program out there. And I think to your point, like, I think there's a lot of, when we have, especially teachers coming in or affiliated with schools in some level, and they run in the LA Marathon and they see all these student runners, they get really interested. So I actually just heard from someone in Salt Lake City that wants to expand a similar program to their city, to their schools, so oftentimes there's just like, it's contagious. And when you see it and you experience that running the LA Marathon, I think that just, it got that inspiration, to continue to expand this in other places.
But we should say also that the program works with the support of the McCourt Foundation, and that LA Marathon, again, allows these free entries for these kids, because you need the big city marathon. And I don't think even, I just don't see New York City opening, again, for many reasons, opening their marathon to kids. I mean, I know the New York Roadrunners does a lot of community outreach to young runners, but in terms of the actual marathon, you can't imagine Boston, Chicago, some of these major, some of the Abbott World majors really allowing this, 3,000 spaces to fill their corrals. So it is a sort of, again, a partnership with the LA Marathon itself. And there's a gentleman on the board who is I think he's the CEO or the head of the LA Marathon. Again, we work closely with them in order to fulfill the mission.
So you're saying you guys have some influence on getting the race to end back in Santa Monica?
I wish it did.
That's where I really had that. So I ran it in 2018 and it ended in Santa Monica, and that was just a beautiful finish,
Yeah.
So you hear about just the current one, I'm like, oh, that's tricky.
I think it's the city of Santa Monica you have to work on more than the marathon.
I imagine. Yeah, I could only imagine. It was such a picturesque way.
That was a nice, gentle finish down San Vicente. Just slightly
uphill.
downhill. Got cooler as you got to the ocean.
Yeah, it was.
It's funny, Chris, that you said that, because one of the years that I ran the kids it was still at the old course, and the group I was running with. This sounds crazy, but some of these kids had never been to the ocean. My group, I ran with a group of fleas. I found a pack of little kids, and some of them were from just areas of LA, and they had not been. And I was like, "Go get that ocean, guys! Go get it!" And they went, and they turned that corner, and as you know, it was just a beautiful finish on Ocean Boulevard. It was kind of magical for these kids on many levels.
Oh, I can't imagine. That's incredible, and that again is like such a cool gift. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
How do people get involved with SRLA, and is there a way for people to donate? We'll obviously put all of this information in the show bio, but what's the best way?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so, especially if looking to run in the LA Marathon, we do have what's called Team SRLA. So you're able to, register for the marathon and fundraise for the program while you're going through your training and doing your own journey. Right now, actually, we have our Marathon Match campaign, which is incredible. I think leading up into the LA Marathon and throughout the month of March, we have a very generous donor that is matching all of the donations up to 35,000. So it's incredible to be able to do that. You can log on to our website where you can do that, srla.org. So we're always welcoming just donations to continue to make sure that we can provide the program absolutely free to all of our participants, and keep our students running and continue to inspire the next generation of runners.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we love to end our show with this one question, and it's really personal for both of you. Both whoever wants to go first, but we always ask the question, what is your own runner high?
Long pause, because we're that's a really beautiful question to ask. And it's funny, I'm going to go for a humble brag for 1 minute, which is that I have done numerous marathons, and I finally got my 6 star last Tokyo, not the Tokyo that just happened, and I had to wade through the pandemic. And it's funny, you think of course medals and all the thing and crossing bucket lists off of the 6 stars, which was a long journey for me to get that. But I think, this program, without sounding like earnest, is really anytime what I try to do is I actually run the marathon, but have to run it fast enough to get on the buses back to mile 22 to run them in. So every marathon for the last couple of years, I've gotten to do what I call my ultra, because it's 26 plus this extra 4 with an hour or 2 break in between to hydrate and eat. And look, by the time these kids get to mile 22, their pace is one that I think I can handle and motivate. So I guess for me, my runner's high really has been the run them in program, where I've already completed my marathon. I feel good about that. And then again, giving back by going back to mile 22 and getting to run 4 miles. And the gift of running each year and learning each kid's story. Last year, again, I wish we could post a video, but I found 2 siblings in the race that I was running her in, and somehow we came across her brother, and we're then running both of them, and we hit mile 23. And and their sibling had done it a couple of years ago, to Gabby's point about how they knew about the program. The sibling and the parents were on the side of around mile 23, mile 24. The parents jumped in to run with their kids. All they could do was about 100 yards. And the dad being so proud of his daughter, particularly, was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. Then we continue on these siblings. I'm sorry, it's a long story. And if you saw the video, you'd really appreciate it, which is we got to the end and I was like, I make my kids run. A lot of them are still walking, running. And I'm like, come on, guys, you're going to get there. You got to run across the finish line. And they both take off, and he's a little bit ahead of her. And he got close to the finish line. He waits for her. He put his hand out, held his sister's hand, and they crossed the finish line holding hands. And I know this sounds like a fairy tale. I promise you, go to my Facebook page. I posted the video. It was one of the most beautiful runner's high I'll ever have, watching these siblings hold hands, cross the finish line together. It was really beautiful. All right, I'm shutting up. Gabby, what's your runner high?
That was beautiful.
I love that. And it is so beautiful. I think just to see all the videos and the emotions and the photos, as many of our students are crossing that finish line. What's interesting, I think for me is life just happens, it's tricky to sometimes get some of those times in to be able to do the super, super, super long distances, and so now it's finding those moments to be able to get to that runner's high in this moment. And I feel like that shifted throughout, my running journey. Most recently, I've been very much into just the shorter distances, and trying to find that. So as I mentioned earlier, I think even doing just some of these 5Ks and being able now to run them alongside my son, and then being also with him, and then these next generation of runners, all of our students from LA kiddos that are participating in it, to be able to meet that goal, whatever that goal is, and my hope is to run another marathon or two or three. But even sometimes, when life happens, it's like, how can I get there? How can I get to my runner's high, even if it's not necessarily a full marathon for this year? So I think being able to do that, with others is always something that's really special. So that's one of those things that I always try to aim for. It's just like whatever the distance is, whatever that time is, that I can meet that I can accomplish that and just feel that jolt of energy to carry me through to the next run.
Amazing. No, that's a perfect note to end on. So, well, yeah, on behalf of Chris and myself, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Gaby. If people want more information, they can go to srla.org. And like Chris said, we'll be sure to put that in the show notes. And Chris, is there anything you'd want to add before we sign off?
I just want to say thank you both. And it was so super informative and inspiring. I think I really appreciate the work that both of you do. And, you'll have lifelong supporters in Mark and I and the Never Not Run crew moving forward with SRLA. So
Thanks, guys.